Hi, welcome to Fun Science with Rohini. This series is about DNA, the molecule of life. After Mendel's work in the early 1800s, everything was forgotten for a while. And then in 1869, Friedrich Miescher was working on identifying proteins in WBC or white blood cells. He collected bandages from a nearby hospital, and the pus-stained bandages were abundant because the Crimean War was on and the wounded soldiers were admitted to the hospital for treatment. So he took the pus-stained bandages and then he washed them with sodium sulfate, collected the liquid that came out of the bandages, and then he started processing it. Because there was no centrifuge back then, he let the solution stand for weeks on end undisturbed. And then the cells settled at the bottom of the beaker. These cells he started identifying or analyzing for proteins. And he found 4 protein molecules in the WBC cells that settled at the bottom of the beaker, and one strange molecule, one new molecule. This was new because it would form precipitates with acids, which is very unlike a protein. It would form precipitates in water, NaCl, and acids, but it would dissolve in an alkali. And it could not be digested by pepsin, which is a protease. That is, pepsin can degrade proteins. So therefore, he concluded that because it cannot be digested by pepsin and unlike proteins, it forms precipitates with acids, and again unlike proteins, it dissolves in alkali, he concluded that this could not be a protein. Instead, he assumed that this came out of the nucleus and he named it nuclein. And this was the first time anybody ever observed DNA, or discovery of DNA, the molecule of life, occurred in 1869 when Friedrich Miescher was studying WBCs. Now, to understand the properties of nuclein, he wanted to purify the molecule. To purify the molecule, back then again, there were no cold conditions that could be maintained in a laboratory. So early in the mornings, on early winter mornings, he kept the windows open so that cold air could come in, and he performed his experiments on those cold winter mornings with the windows open. And to purify nuclein, he gave several washes of alcohol to it, and then he wanted to remove all protein parts and the cytoplasm and everything that could interfere with his nuclein. And so he treated it with pepsin, and he shook it in ether and water till he got a fine powder, and that fine powder he again washed with ether and alcohol, and he got purified nuclein. This purified nuclein is the first pure sample of DNA. And along with this, he found nuclein in kidney, liver, all the tissues that he observed in frogs, in fishes, in bulls. And then he also came up with a hypothesis that if anybody is to consider fertilization, he or they cannot do it without considering nuclein as an important part of the fertilization event. But unfortunately, he discarded his hypothesis halfway through. And if anybody asks you about the discovery of DNA and who is to be credited for isolating, purifying the DNA, it is definitely Friedrich Miescher. Thank you.